Hey guys, we've finally launched our newsletter you've been asking for. Head over to thefinancialcoconut.com to drop your email to be part of our weekly TFC newsletter. You'll receive our podcast transcript, other resources to level up your financial literacy game, and some good ideas to incorporate some fun into your week. So make sure to check your various inboxes every Tuesday morning and sign up today at thefinancialcoconut.com. See ya! Okay, I promise you guys that I'm going to bring a very good friend of mine to come on the show to share with us more and make a case why you should go to university. Of course, we are not blind, right? We know what works, what doesn't work, what's good, what's not. But there is so much internet content out there that talks about why you shouldn't go to university, why the uni is eating up your money, you're coming out a lot of debt and all those kind of stuff, which they are not wrong per se. Objectively, they have some points, but we want to bring about the other side of the discussion so you make a better decision. So happy to be with you guys again, and today we're going to spend time with our good friend Ben. In the first place, I got you on the show to do one thing, right? It's to make a pitch to people that are considering the universities.
Yeah.
Right, so mostly two groups of people, right? Those that are already in the university, and the other group is the people that are considering going to the university, right? Because I think the general pitch out there is like anti-uni, right? At this point in time, right? Of course, the uni people will never say it's shit, but I think among all your quote-unquote gurus, right? A lot of fucking internet gurus, right? They all like, the general narrative is that you don't need to go to university to succeed, right? Which I don't think is wrong, right? But I got you today to pitch to the people that are considering university,
Right.
Why should they go to the university? Because I feel that you have, essentially kind of really milked the system.
Okay.
So yes,
I think on my part, I would say that there are a few things that consider if I want to go to university, right? I think the first would definitely be the fact that at the university itself, you have groups of people around you, and that itself is networks, people, and having a source of ideas. And that is akin to, like, in the past, Socrates, Aristotle, having this area where people come together to share. And I think that's very important because whether you like it or not, we are all social people, we're all social creatures, and we learn by being with each other, by doing things together. And that's what, to me, the university really is about. And I think perhaps the second thing that I'm thinking about for people who actually want to go to university is that there are so many things that you could possibly learn on the internet yourself, but then when a person does it together with you, it is a whole new different thing. And of course, you can actually just go Coursera or edX and do a course and do it with someone else that's matched online by like personality traits or like, what, God knows what these other things do, right? But then it's going to be pretty much quite good, but then it's still not as good compared to that human interaction and having this person to understand that, hey, this is a journey that I'm doing this with you, and therefore there are certain synergies, certain benefits that we can actually do it together. So I think it's the second thing which I'm thinking about. And probably the last thing which I'm really thinking about as well is that this entire thing about university really is about brand. And brand, unfortunately, right now, we have Coursera, we have edX, we have like so many other internet gurus, as you mentioned, coming up. But these do not lend a brand. Yeah, so like it's as if I were to say that right now I listened to this guy, I applied his skill sets, and then I achieved this. But then to everyone around you is like, is it really true? Are you really what you say you are? Or are you just like someone, how can you say that you are actually as good as that person or have all these kind of traits or these skill sets just by listening to, like, let's say a 20-hour webinar, right? Or like something that's online, like it's very different versus like, let's say an institution that has been there for a pretty long time. It's tried and tested. It has been through ages and it has been through even revolutions. And I think that's something which the brand of the university actually lends itself. But then that is where I think things will get upended, right?
Okay, so essentially based on what you just said, whether is it brand, whether is it like a social circle that is in school, or whether is it like the kind of quality of education that one can get interacting with a real individual
Yeah.
rather than just like online webinar, which I
Yeah.
think a lot of people can understand.
Yes.
Right? They can comprehend this reality that it's really different learning face to face with a geek. Essentially, your professors are geek. Okay, they
Yeah,
spend
correct.
tons and tons
Yeah.
of their life to go and geek it out on some topic, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes they're not very passionate because they're not teaching the topic that they're really passionate about. If
Yeah.
you're gonna read their research paper,
Mm.
they're passionate about something else.
Yes, correct.
Right? It's just
Yeah.
not part of the repertoire, and then I need to feed myself, so I anyhow teach something.
Yep.
I don't blame them, but if you want to learn more from your prof, maybe you should also go and read a little bit about what do they really love.
Yeah.
But all
Agreed.
those things are very how should I put it? Very high order, right? It sounds like, okay, we got a brand, we got network, we got better learning. How does that translate to benefits in life?
In life.
Right? Like okay, I'm going to uni, so why should I go? What are the real benefits that I'm gonna get? Other than all these kind of like I get what you're saying,
Yeah.
but yeah, how does that translate?
I think that it's we have to really go back to the social aspect, because the social aspect would then dictate that I am part of this group, and that is what the social aspect really does. So of course we can actually create organizations that are similar to university, that actually creates this social kind of context and so on. It's just that most of these things are like tertiary, meaning that they come after university. So I can think about, let's say in the venture capital world, there's like Kaufman Fellows, right? So Kaufman Fellows, essentially if you are who's who in VC and you want to do your like stuff well and network, you need to pay $200,000, attend this program, and then go to US for like perhaps I think 2 to 3 months. Yeah, and it's more expensive than an MBA. But then people say that this program itself brings you more networks than if you were to go to, let's say, Harvard or to go to Stanford. And that's a kind of a tertiary kind of thing to it, because they have really created a social thing. But then that Kaufman Fellows, as an example, is something that's after a university, where people predicate and say that, I've really done this, I've really gone to this place where I am, and I just need to get more networks, and that's where I get more networks from. But then if you look at the profiles of the people who actually went for these things, they tend to be having very good degrees, or even if they don't have good degrees, they come from good pedigrees, or even if like they don't come from good pedigrees and they actually do drop out from school, there was someone who took a chance on them, and that percentage is extremely slim.
Extremely
Yeah,
slim.
so I think that
rare people, right?
Yeah, so I think that really is what the reality sometimes is.
So based on success rate, the chances of you doing well, in life will probably be higher if you stuck to university. In other words, that's what I'm
in other words,
translating.
this is what the statistics
Right.
actually
Yeah,
actually
statistics shows,
Yeah,
right?
correct,
It's not learn from some internet guru, then suddenly,
correct.
你可以, suddenly amazing, right? Or, the success rate of startups are like super, super low, right?
Yes.
I think statistically it's about 5%, or 5% that kicks off, right? Those that really end up there, maybe it's like 0.5 or like a 1%.
Agree.
Of everyone that start. That doesn't mean you shouldn't start. If you are passionate about something and you feel that there's a market gap, do what you need to do.
Yeah, that's
right.
true.
But for the many out there, I think going to university is still quite a natural success kind of journey. Like if you want to do well, and get to where you are, and you are in, essentially the private equity space, right? Although you work for a family office, right?
Yes.
But your focus is to get deals, and it's very much a PE job.
Yeah, it's very much PE job.
Just in a family office, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
how did you get there, right? Going to the university, right? Share with us a little bit of your story.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Okay. I think I do not come from a traditional private equity background, meaning that I didn't go to investment banking, and I didn't jump from investment banking into private equity. And in a sort of way, you're right. I'm in a multi-family office, slightly different from private equity, because one main difference for you guys here who don't really understand the industry, is just very simple, that we, instead of putting our money in the private equity funds, we actually go direct. Yeah, so that's really what we do. And I think that really necessitates a few other things, because you are not just deploying funds, but you're also sourcing. And you're not just sourcing, but you're maintaining a relationship. And that's where it's a sort of a bridge between private equity and your private wealth, because you cannot lose your money. So the returns that I have, and I look at my deals, are a lot more specific and of a higher bar. Yeah, so I think that's one key difference. How I actually got here, I would say, is through a myriad of experiences. So like some people ask me on my LinkedIn, like, when I was younger, they were like, why are you like doing all these other things in your life? You know, you're doing management consulting, and then suddenly you go into tech, and then suddenly you go into shipping, and then you do something else, and then everyone's like, I mean, there is no clear trajectory. So every time in an interview, I need to explain myself that, hey, you know, it's not that I don't have a clear trajectory. It's just that I wanted to do something which was different and to build experiences in other things, such that if I look at a business today, I can assess it really fast. So I think that was what I really want to build. But then, you know, myopically, if you're in e-commerce and the e-commerce guy sees that you're in shipping, he'll like, dude, man, then what you interviewing here for? You know, he doesn't understand it. Yeah. So I think that was firstly the myriad of experiences. Second, it was sort of this combination of various quote unquote hard skills. And I'll call them quote unquote hard skills because this would relate to the degree. So when I entered SMU, I was doing a double degree. So I was doing law and economics. And law itself is an extremely technical subject because you need to understand the statutes, you need to understand how to apply the law. And
In other words, very boring.
Yeah, in other words, it's pretty boring.
Very dry.
Yeah.
You got to suck it up. Well, this is
yeah.
the constitution, right? This is what we live by.
Yes. And I think that what really is quite interesting about that is that you really understand how to debate your points. And I think that's very important as you actually progress in the private equity world. Because in private equity, when you source for deals, essentially what you're doing is that you're being a lawyer. You need to bring your case before, let's say, a quote-unquote judge, which is, let's say, your investment committee, or bring your case towards, let's say, your client, right? And tell them that, hey, I have deal X and X, these are my returns, and these are the risk. And why does my return and the risk make sense? And you have to make a case for that. And I think that's where the lawyering skills I had really come into play. So I would suggest that, you know, sometimes you may, maybe an application point, right? You know, you may be in a degree that sort of doesn't have a certain route towards, let's say, what you're doing, you know, but that's fine, you know, but then like,
like history, literature.
Yeah, like history, yes, correct. Yeah.
Yes. I have great friends that they study history, and when they were studying history, people would be like, why you study history?
Yeah,
Can do what? Be teacher.
Yeah.
You know, but then they got poached by the ministry
Yeah.
to do foreign affairs, you know, because they understand history and they understand, you know, different countries. Where do a lot of their policies? Where do they come from? That's all, you know, stem from their history, right? So I was like, oh, that's interesting. I never thought that it could get that way, right?
Yeah. So I would say these 2 points. Of course, there are definitely many others.
Yeah.
But then it would just mainly be the fact that I actually did many different things, and I studied something which didn't have a bearing on finance. Yeah, so sometimes I always joke with my friends. I tell them that, you know, I studied law and economics, but I get hired for my finance and marketing skills. So like I think that like then you know that brings to the point of, you know, the university thing, right? Like, does it really need to have university?
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
and I think that's the question that I think Reginald and I really want to answer today. And I think it's not that simple. You know, it's complex topic. It's not that simple to just dissect it and say that, hey, you know, since you are just learning history, right, in school, why learn history? You know, at the end of the day, you're not going to be a historian. You're just going to come out and be like someone who actually works in MFA. Yeah, or worse still, you might be doing something that does not have any bearing to history, like if you're doing like public relations or something like that. But then how does it help? So I think this is where, going back to the points I made earlier on the social aspects and as well as having the brand name. But I want to add a third point to this, which is that I think in a university, it's where you can actually discover yourself. And unfortunately or fortunately, this really depends on the university you go to, right? So there are some universities out there, you call them liberal colleges in the US, where it really allows you to expand. And there is no judgment upon, you know, let's say I am an anthropology major, and then tomorrow I tell myself that I want to study a computer science course. You know, that's totally possible, right? Yes. But then let's say you come from NUS and then you actually, you know, you study like geography and then suddenly one day you just tell the like people around you, hey, I just want to study computer science. They're like, dude, this guy is nuts, you know? Like this guy clearly is out of his mind and you suddenly find you have no friends. Yeah, people are like, what is wrong with this dude?
He's
you know?
a weird guy, man.
Yeah. So I think it really depends on which school you go to. And, you know, coming from SMU, you know, I saw a bit of Koyo. But then like SMU does come in a middle ground.
SMU is a Koyo seller.
Yeah, you have like people who actually sort of can actually do like economics, and they can actually do law as well. Like myself, you actually can actually like do a double major in other things which are not related. But although then, of course, like I need to give a disclaimer and a caveat there that not everyone does it right in SMU. How many people actually do it? Most of the people are finance plus accounting. It's not finance plus
Sounds
sociology
so
or something
boring,
like
but
that. Yeah,
yes.
so it's so different. Yeah.
And I just want to chime in on the liberal colleges.
Yeah.
Right. So for all of you, have not gone to college, considering college. I'm not saying that Singapore has any liberal colleges. I think we have one, the Yale,
Yale
the Yale
NUS,
partnership
yes.
with NUS. Right. So you realize that in a lot of these liberal colleges, they allow you to enter the university without having any fixed direction. Right, so you're just joining year one. Oh, what are you doing? No, I'm just year one here in Yale or something,
Yeah.
right? One of these liberal colleges, and they do a cross field study so that you learn different stuff, and you finally make your decision. And along the way, if you want to pivot, you can always pivot. I think that's the beauty of university as a discovery platform.
Yes.
And I mean, even for yourself, right? You've done all these different things. Whether is it starting your own clubs, or going out there and trying different fields. But all those things, do you think you could have done it without the university?
Right.
Right, because
that's a good question.
That
actually.
is the question. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a really great question because I think that a lot of things which I have done, I would say it goes back to the social contract thing. Like, why would you, like, when you start a community, like whether it is the mentoring circle which I started, or Atom's Watch Club, or like Cogito Collective, right? All of them start because you are in a position of authority, and you can actually say that I bring together a group of experts who know this thing well, and I bring that knowledge or like that education to other people and democratize it. So that necessitates you to have that authority in the first place. And where do you borrow that authority from? You borrow it from someone else, like which is like a school or university. And I think that's where being in a university definitely helps a lot, because you are also borrowing the name of the university. And coming from an Asian culture, and we are Asians ourselves, you cannot go against the culture of the land. It's tough, right? So that like for example, people ask me about the minimum wage thing with James Lim and things like that. Contentious topic, right? But then it's like bringing Scandinavian things, ideas in. Like it might not work, it may work, it might not work. So I think cultural things might actually be different. So I think that like if you were to look at the flip side, whether I were not to be in university and could I actually start this, I think that definitely I can. But would it be as successful? I'm really not sure. But if I had no choice, if I had no choice, I didn't go to university and I start this, definitely what I have done is that I'll be the maverick, right? And then I'll bring in people who are in these universities, who have that brand name, that kind of like reputation, and borrow that. So to me, it is no longer about yourself, rather not about the organization you're starting, but then what is your competitive advantage? If you find that your competitive advantage lies in the fact that you are better at pulling people in, and you don't need your reputation, right? You just bring other people's reputation in and start this thing, then it works. But then if your competitive advantage is that, maybe you're better at studying, you did well in school, and that works for your advantage, then fine. You should work towards your advantage at the most of the times.
So in other words, what we can agree upon is, if you really want to do something, you can get it done with or without the university.
Yes,
right?
I agree.
But there is some form of like brand leverage, the kind of authority leverage that you get in the university, being
agreed.
part of the university, right? Which I agree, because I'm a dropout, right? So from my optics, right, it's like, you can do, man. Everything also can do. Yeah, you can do it on your own. We live in a relatively free society, right?
Yes.
Some barriers you don't touch, but other than that, you could just go out and champion a lot of these things, right? And start whatever venture, whatever community you want to start. But it is an uphill battle, right?
Yes.
Because people see you as a solokian, right? People see you as like this guy's weird guy, and then you try to do something, and then it's like, so what, right? But being in a university, you have the brand, you have the kind of like thought authority in the space. You borrow that brand, and also I think there are just a lot of uni kids around waiting to be shepherded, like, honestly.
Yes,
right?
I agree.
It's like, oh my god, you got a free market here. Everyone is here. They don't know what the hell they're doing. Dance, SMU.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. I think that like you're very right on that. The good thing about university is that there's a lot of talent. And like I think we were talking about this. I don't know if I talked about this with you, but then this idea is that when you run a startup, it's very hard to find good talent, because good talent usually wants to do their own startup.
Yes.
Yeah, but then SMU or like NUS produces very good talent that don't want to run their own startup but work for you. Yeah, so that's the best. You know what I mean? If you're a business owner, like this is kind of one of the best things ever, right?
Yeah. I totally get that. So I think we have sufficiently shared, the viewpoint where, if you are considering university, we both recognize that a lot of things you don't need the university to do it, even in today's context, right? I think okay, maybe not even, like especially in today's context, when information is so liberal, you can learn on so many platforms, right? So that it is not a must that you need to go to the university, but by going to the university, you have all this leverage of social network, brand, authority in the space, and it's just much easier to kick off a lot of these small little stuff, right? Because
Agree.
that is my viewpoint. I have a lot of friends in the startup field, and a lot of them that are doing better started in the university.
Yeah.
Right, because the
That is
university
true.
have all this kind of accelerator system, ecosystem, and talent is everywhere. All these people are pretty smart. I mean, mugger or not, right? Even if they're mugger, they're quite determined, right? That's why they managed to get to university.
Yeah,
so
right.
you gotta give salute to the mugger, okay?
Yeah.
Not always say the mugger, but so like they got to the university. There's a select, process, and you have all these people. Then you work with them, you use them, right, based on their talent, and then you just kind of build your stuff, right, or build your community in that process. So I think that is the value in the university at this point in time. And for people that are already in the university, right, what are your thoughts, for them, right? Okay, since you're already inside already, right, and then you're listening to this podcast, right, then what are you gonna, how are you gonna make your university better, right? How are you gonna like benefit through this thing rather than just going for lectures, missing tutorials, and then like go and dance, For all of you who have not been to SMU, there's this like underpass, right, that runs through the whole.
Actually, not everyone there is SMU.
Okay. So it runs through the whole spine of the university, the underground basement spine, and then it's like tons of people dancing. I was like, what's like SMU student? Don't need to study one. This everyday kind of dance, hip hop, street like that, right? I was like, okay. But that aside, okay, but yes. So if they're in the university, right, how do they better, like benefit themselves in this process, right? How can they leach?
I think
leach.
I think I mean, leach also is but I mean the amount they pay for university is not leach anymore. I think I think the university is leaching off them. I mean to answer your question, I was just thinking a few things. One is definitely the fact that universities are really expensive. Like, I mean, in Singapore, we have it relatively cheaper, right? You have like SMU is probably the most expensive. You have law is the most expensive in SMU. It's around $6,000 like for one semester. So it's $12,000 a year. Of course, don't account for medicine. Medicine is different, right? But then that is the highest. Like NUS is probably a bit cheaper. But then $12,000 a year is still pretty much. It is not very, very high. It's not like US or like UK or Australia, but it's still pretty high. And you're paying quite a huge sum to be in a university. And I think, as you rightly pointed out, how do you actually leverage on this entire system? On that, I don't think that there are really any fixed routes. So what I mean is that, like, going back to your dance point, right? When you say that they dance, right? Actually, when dance also helps you a lot. Like there's this club called E-Mix in SMU, and I think that like within the community there, they actually share internships. They're pretty smart people. They don't study the hardest. They don't get like the. I mean, some of them do get like very good grades, but not everyone gets the best grades. But then they're social, right? They are able to like get things done. They're able to wine and dine and like be a person and friend to other people that people like, and that's why they're hired. Yeah, so I think that does play into the aspect of life, and sometimes dancing is not a bad thing.
Yeah. Just want to put it out there, okay? I'm not against dancing. I can't dance, okay? I can't dance. That's why when I look at them, I was like, wow, quite cool, every day practice. Right? So I just want to put it out there. Don't flame me, okay? I'm not against dancers. I'm sure we have some dancers in the group. Pursue your passion. I agree with that. I believe in that, right? So it's I just use dance
definitely.
It's just a joke.
Yeah. I mean, you can also make a joke about people in the library all the time. Like me, I'm always in the library. So
I was always in the pool, so like my friends are like, hey, you come to country club or you come to uni, right? It's like, that's why 1 sem later I stopped coming, right? It's like I told myself, it's like, I must make use of it. It's a very expensive pool, so I pay 6,000, I was like, better use this well.
Yeah.
But yes. So okay, I get the part about like having a social network, being in school. Don't just be a mugger, right?
Yep.
In other words, right?
Yep.
You want to do well in your exams. Okay, so be it. That's cool, right? But you are in this like very fertile space where
Yes.
a lot of these people are either really hardworking, very smart, or very rich, lah. For like a better way to put
yeah,
it.
yeah, it's true. It
Right,
does have
okay.
a social strata to it.
Right, so there is a social strata to it. Of course, we can always talk about social mobility, how to
Yeah,
like
there's
get
another
more
topic,
people in
Yeah.
into this system and da da da. That's a good topic. We need to talk about it another time, right? But assuming you're already in university, in other words, don't just mug,
Yep.
right? Don't just mug and join all these kind of social groups, right? Through pursuing your passion, you never know what kind of professional opportunities can come in,
Yes.
right? But beyond that, right? Are there certain kind of resources in school that you think they should leverage on? You know,
Right.
like that's not so readily available
Yes.
out of school.
Understand.
Yeah, maybe like incubator program or something. Yeah.
I would say the best one is alumni. Alumni is definitely the best.
Yeah.
Really, because it's always about it goes back to the social aspect. Why would someone help you? Because I come from the same school. That's a huge thing, right? And like whether you like it or not, we have parliament filled with ACSI and RI boys. Right? I mean, there's what you want to call
Where
it.
does Josephine Teo and Grace Fu come from? Like
I have no
RG
idea.
girl maybe?
I really-
I
I
don't
have
know.
no
We gotta
idea.
check it out. Yes. I know what you mean. Yes.
Yeah, but it's not just Singapore, right? You have it in London, you have it in like even in Mozambique and in Africa as well. I mean, these countries also have these things. It's not so don't flame. I don't think you should flame government. I think it's something which is inherent in social mobility, and society is just like that. Yeah, and I think that also really points to the fact that having the alumni network that you have is pretty important, and that's something you can leverage on because whether you like it or not, you're going to remain an alumni at school forever. So when I stepped up as the president of Smoothpreneurs, which is the alumni entrepreneurship club in SMU, like some people asked me why I wanted to do it, and then I was like, yeah, apart from the fact that I do get certain benefits, I talk to certain people, things like that, the normal yada yada, but then it's about the fact that like maybe apart from you and a few other people, like who else is going to help the school? Who else has the networks? Who else has like the capabilities to actually bring things together? And you realize that as an alumni of the school, if you don't help the school, no one else is going to do it. The staff of the school won't do it because the staff of the school come from maybe NUS. Yeah, it's true. Like a lot of stuff in SMU does come from NUS. And I mean, like
SMU did poach a whole bunch of NUS guys.
Yeah, we did poach a whole bunch of NUS
start
guys.
with, yes.
And they are passionate about SMU, don't get me wrong. But the thing is that they are not alumni. And like you need the alumni to really say that, helping the students actually helps me. Because I then have a better pool of students to actually pull from. And they are, in a way, my mentees in a way. So I think that's one. And the other flip side, if you are like a student in school currently, you should reach out alumni because they are thinking that way. So that like the first point you're talking about. But then the other second point is mainly that you have shared experiences with them. The dancing thing. Yeah, like it works. Like there's this alumni club which is so it's EMIX, right? And then there's I think Illuminix, which is the alumni club. And then they do actually talk to each other. And I think there's so much synergies there. And more than that, it's just the fact that by reaching out to any alumni, they probably understand what you're going through. They know the teachers you went through. They know the classes. The classes may be slightly different, but then they'll talk about the same few things like this professor is like that, or like this class is such a useless class, like name drop I don't know, business government society. So like I don't know, things like that. It's just like not very useful in a way, but then people will just talk about these things, right?
It is a lot of social comfort to have shared experience, right? I think this is inevitable, which is why when guys gather together, everybody talk about the army, right? Then all the girls be like turned off, right? It just doesn't work because they don't have the shared experience, in this process. So I totally get what you're trying to say, and I'm a question, like was it difficult to get the president of the alumni entrepreneur club? Because what you just said was like nobody wants to do it, right? It feels like nobody wants to do it,
Yes.
or so in that sense, is it because nobody wants to do it that's why you got it, or is it because you're actually the best candidate at the point in time,
Understand.
right?
Yeah, I think to look at it in this way is that what CCAs when you're young, right? Then like everyone just go to student council, things like that. But then you grow older, you realize people don't want to do it because there's no incentive. It's like CIP, right? There's no incentive to do it. It's not cool anymore. and it's just different. It's like it's not cool to do this anymore. I don't get any prestige, but then it seems like it's more work. Why should I do it? Like I don't have to fulfill any criteria. It doesn't minus 2 points for my O levels, right? So I think that must be viewed at that point. That I think there's no incentive for many other people. Then second is that I would say that because alumni clubs are tough to run, it's not paid, right? You're not getting paid for it, and other people are actually wanting you to continue, and you need to be successful, and you need to actually do a good job of it because it still represents the school, and represents the alumni who actually come from the school. So I think that previous predecessors would try to find someone who they know can do it. Yeah, so I wouldn't say that there aren't people. Neither would they say that there are a lot of people who want the job. Yeah, so I think that's probably what these alumni groups would be like.
Fair.
Yeah.
And I think, given my short stint in the university,
Yeah.
it's like 6 months, okay, not bad lah. I
Yeah.
got past 6 months. So given my short stint in the university,
You wrote on your LinkedIn.
I wrote on my LinkedIn, okay? My LinkedIn said I was from US. Yeah. But I also got brackets say I drop out, okay? Anyway, just saying. Alright, so the reality is, I think there are a lot of student groups, big and small.
Yeah.
Some groups are not as sexy right? Not
Yeah.
as interesting. Maybe like the otaku club, right? The Japanese
Oh, yeah,
cultural
yeah.
club. It's like, okay, but anyway, okay, I'm not judging otaku club, right? But you get the idea. It's
Yes.
just social context. So I think there are a lot of clubs in the university, or even if you don't have like clubs in the university, you could always start your own interest group,
Yes.
right? And whether it's official or whether it's just a social, just a informal student community, I think that is all fine. And like all these kind of alumni groups, ultimately the reality is, being in a university, there's just tons of little things that you can try and you can do, and if you fail, what happens? Just fail lah.
Yeah.
There's not much impact, in your CV. What happened? You just don't put in your CV lah, right?
Yeah,
it's just,
it's true.
It failed, then okay, never mind. Nobody knows this like hot air balloon club that I started, because it didn't became a thing,
Yep.
right? So, but when you start to go into the real world, or okay, maybe not the real, you start to establish your career, you start to go into the business world, or you embark on different professions of your own, then there's a whole different world of challenges here, and the impact of failure it's much higher.
Yes, the impact of failure is
The
much higher.
impact of failure is much higher. So after a while, people start to become more and more safe.
Yes.
That people are not willing to try, and they don't do as much, and then, in other words, they don't break through also because
Yes.
they're not willing to take calculated risk.
Yep.
Right. So we'll take a break. We'll come back, and after the break, we'll talk a little bit more about how can we better the university, right? And also talk a little bit more about, now that all these young people are in the professional field, how can they thrive in this field? Okay. See ya, guys. Hey guys, I know you're expecting an ad, but yes, at this moment, I just want to thank you for supporting us, and I hope that you can share this podcast with one other person today. At the same time, if you really enjoy what we are doing, head over to whichever platform you're consuming our podcast and drop us a review so that more people can get in touch with the Financial Coconut. Meanwhile, take care, stay healthy, and keep learning. See ya! Okay, so we are back from the break, and so we want I want to hear a little bit. I think we've built a decent case for the value of university,
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
But I'm also very certain that there are many aspects that the university can do better,
Yes.
which is why there is a growing voice about how the university is no longer as relevant today, which is also very real, right? There are a lot of things that I think they can become better, right? So I want to hear from you, like, where do you think the university can better serve the needs of its students, right? Which ultimately serves to help them have a head start in the career, right? Or become a professional in whatever field that they choose to be,
Agree.
right? So
Yeah.
so in that sense, where do you think the university can do better?
Right. I think that that's sort of a bit philosophical, but then when university started, like Oxford, Cambridge, right? It's mainly natural sciences, natural philosophy. People just go there, rich people, right? They have your governors, in their house, and then they just come together, learn with their friends, and then these guys really, they don't study anything, they study the entire world, and they just go on to become lawyers, take high positions in society. And then of course, the Industrial Revolution, people came in, realized that, hey, the rise of the middle class, and that were the people who started going to university, and university started to change because then it started to be focused on the division of labor and focusing on how do you build skills in each division of labor. And that's what universities really became and transformed into. And it's been always like this. And then it became more pronounced even to today. Which is why, let's say in SMU today, you have like operations management, but then operations management focused on supply chain. You know, like it's very specific. Or like finance focused on private banking. Yeah, so I think that's where universities have really transformed to. But then back to your question on where next, right? I would say that it's really where I think that universities really have to disrupt itself, or else you die. And recently there's a meme going around, right? Harvard Business School is charging $50,000, and then that compares to Zoom, which is like I think like what $40 a month, yeah, Coursera and all the rest of the kind of things which you actually get the same skills, right? Because if Harvard Business School and all your other universities are actually just doing online classes, like what's the difference between that and like studying from something that's pre-recorded?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that's where universities are struggling right now in this period of time, the pandemic, to sort of reinvent itself. And I think on another note itself, like a bit of selling koyo from my side, because I started Kinobi, right? So Kinobi is like this digital mentoring career platform that helps people to bridge that gap. And we acknowledge that there's a gap. There's a gap between the university and the workplace, and that's why we're there. We're here to bridge the gap. Yeah, and I think that for that, this is what we actually found. We found that the university itself is insufficient. And that's because people don't look at your grades anymore. It's important. But then as long as you meet the sufficient ones, like maybe like you get above a second lower, that's fine, You show that you're decently smart enough to actually sort of like do your work and then do the exams. And then you're a sufficiently hard worker. And that's all. That's what it tells me about you. But it doesn't tell me anything more. Right? So what do I need more? I need to understand like who you are as a person. When I put you in front of a client, what will you say? Do you have the EQ to like, know when to respond? Things like that. Like these are things that a university degree doesn't teach you. And I think that's where university can pivot there. But the thing about pivoting there is that it's tough because these universities are monoliths, right? They are already there for so long. They have huge reserves. They're essentially like a bank with all your money that they take inside, right? And they even have funds in universities. And some of these guys are LPs in private equity funds as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so Harvard Business School, your Stanford, all these guys are actually putting your money that you actually put inside and deploying into other things. Right? So that's how they actually run. And NUS, we heard that recently, the Konghi case, right? And then he was compared to the NUS fund and so on. And then you realize how much funds the NUS actually has.
Yes.
Right. And I think that when you have this amount of funds and people want to protect these funds, they don't innovate. It's very hard to innovate. It's very hard to turn around a huge ship. Versus, let's say you are a small ship, you are something that just started, you don't have baggage, you can do things a lot faster. And I think that's where universities might get disrupted. I'm not saying like people like Kinobi, maybe let's see how it goes, right?
Yeah,
but then it's really...
I'm not saying but actually I won I trying to direct a bit but actually I'm doing this so that I can disrupt the university in some way, right?
Yeah, of course. And I think that's where there are going to arise people like Kinobi, across the world. They actually want to do this.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I do think for a little bit of a realistic check, for a lot of people out there, it's like, sometimes we ask ourselves, why every generation needs to be doing more and more and more and more and more, right?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, because that it sounds like it, right? And I think that is a reality, right? Because in the past, you just need to, as a guy, you just need to be decently strong. You can get a certain job, right? But then over time, things change, and then you go to the polys, you go to universities, and you be multilingual, right? You got to do more and more and more and more, and that is the nature of the workplace competition, right? Where especially when a lot of technology platforms come in to like essentially displace some of these old jobs, that are very repetitive, and it requires people to think, and do more, right? So, do you subscribe to that central idea that you got to do more and more,
right?
Or is there another way around this way of life?
Understand.
Right?
I think this is a very complex question because one way you can look at it is that people say that you don't work hard, you work smart, right? And that applies to much of life. I think that whether you're in finance or marketing or whether you're in supply chain, that is the rule, which is that it's not how hard you work, it's how you actually play the relationships and understand what is really needed to be done. Then you get promoted and then you get to the next level. But then the other way that I'm thinking about it is this idea that social mobility. Because in the past, it used to be that social mobility is between countries, a developed country versus a non-developed country or developing country. So you have like, let's say, the workers and foreign workers in Singapore, they build out a nation, Bangladeshi workers. Some of them actually do have university degrees. They may not speak English very well, but then are actually smart. They went to university, and that to them coming here to work is definitely providing more pay than going back home, and that works for Filipino maids as well. But then right now what we are seeing is a more drastic change, which is that even in Singapore, you have people or you may have people, may not be as drastic now, but you may have people in the future who have university degrees, maybe not from your NUS or SMU, but you're from your like more private universities, who actually come up and realize they don't have the jobs. And what do they have to do? With the rise of the gig economy, they actually go back and be, let's say, a Grab driver, just for interim, a transition kind of like job. But then this transition job doesn't provide the benefits that a normal job would have, like your CPF and so on. And under the Constitution of Singapore and how the government views it, is that Grab is really a transition job. That's why there isn't CPF benefits allocated to that. But then what happens when this transition job becomes a permanent one for 10 years? Yeah, or like for 5 years. What do we actually make out of it? How does the government make out of it? And I think that's very scary, because then that goes against what you just said. Because you said that people are going to work harder with the things, and it's true, they're going to work harder, and they don't even use the university degree.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think that really is something which is scary, and that goes beyond universities really.
Fair.
Yeah.
I think that is fair point. It's a complex question.
Yeah.
And we really got to go deeper to kind of distill, the job market, the opportunity, Singapore's position in the global standing, and naturally a lot of social policies start to come in, right? Cannot cover, today. But we will talk about it another time. Maybe we get a few professor, right? Uni professor come in and discuss, right? I think that would be fun. But on that note, right, from an individual's viewpoint, given the current reality of the job market,
Yes.
right, given the current reality, you definitely sound like someone that is doing decently well, right? Out of the university, right?
Yeah.
And like you just graduated.
Yeah, it's fortunate too, I guess.
Yeah, right? So fortunate is one way to look at it.
Yes,
There probably is a system behind this thing, right? So it's
In a way,
like,
yes, yeah.
In a way, right? So could you just kind of share with the audience a little bit, like if you are trying to like find a good job, and you don't actually have that kind of experience in the field, are there some tips and tricks that people can embark on?
Okay. I think one is definitely to be eager. To me, this idea of you as a startup is very important to me. I think that this is something, especially so in the gig economy.
So you're saying that you got to see yourself as a startup. Okay.
Yes. You got to see yourself as a startup. And especially in gig economy where, in a way, you're not going to rely on any firm. No firm is going to give you an iron rice bowl anymore. No firm is going to give you the pension fund benefits anymore. It's different.
Long ago, right?
Long ago it's gone. Yeah, right. And right now there's the rise of contract jobs. I think that really necessitates. Beyond the social things you're talking about, which is another topic another day. How can I, as a person, really deal with this? Is mainly to look at myself as a startup and to ask myself, how can I use my competitive advantage versus other people? What is my unique selling point? What is the product which is myself trying to solve? Like what solution in this world am I trying to solve with my own efforts and my own energies? And I think that if you can actually answer that question sufficiently well, and you can do it sufficiently well, you'll be paid for it. Yeah, and especially so if you're doing something that nobody can do, right? Yeah. And the more scarce the solution you're trying to solve, the higher you're paid. And that's just a law of scarcity in nature.
So how did you convince your employers to use you? Right, because from what I know, the kind of deals that you guys are working on are, naturally in a higher order, right? So that means the deal is quite big, huh? It's complex deals and big deals, and you're fronting a lot of these deals, but you're barely in your 30s, right? Late 20s, right? So fresh out of the university, a few years in the market, how did you manage to convince your boss, to use you? Right? Share with us your story.
Right. I think that if just like 3 short points, if I can actually mention, I think firstly it is back to certain things you talked about. One is pointing my employer to a myriad of experiences I had. I think that's very important because that shows that when you are in private equity and you're in investments, you understand the market, and you understand it not from just one perspective, but you can look from different lenses, and that is interesting because it means that you can understand what's happening next, and you can sort of like do your what do you there's this term for it, but it's like, this idea of innovation is actually not really innovation, but then you're actually just taking a perspective from another field and just applying it into this field. Yeah, so that's what you're doing. It's not really called innovation, but then not many people can do it. So, but if you can do it and you can actually like do it properly, I think you will beat most people out there because everyone is very single track, right? So I think that's one. Second would be your networks, because at the end of the day, when you do deals and even not just doing deals, right? If you're just doing a normal, let's say, finance function, you're just like calculating, let's say, the taxes in a company, and that's your only job. But the thing is that if you're just doing that job, you need to work together with everyone else. You need to work together with like the people who are doing the revenue department. You need to work together with the cost department. You need to work together with your CFO. You need to work together with all your other business functions to get that thing out. And that means that you need to talk to people. You need to make them a friend. Because why would they respond to you? Everyone's busy, right? They only respond to you because they know that you are someone that is important to them.
In some way, they must also like you.
Yeah, they must like you.
I think there is some sort of social, reality here. We are working with humans. We are not working with robots, right? It's not asking you to go and sakang, or like just kind of like, be what do they call that? What do you used to call that in the army? They call the person very wayang.
Yes.
I'm not asking you to be a wayang, but at least you want to be a nice person. People are interested to work with you. And at least be socially palatable. I think that is a very, very, especially to a lot of my friends out there that, like the tech guys.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, it's a stereotype that people assume that tech guys are not sociable.
Yeah.
And there's some basis to it. Right. It's not the best thing to accept. Right. And in fact, I do know a lot of them that are working very hard to, become more sociable, which is very cool.
Yes.
But I think across the fields, right, being socially likable, I think that is important.
Agree. And the third thing I just mentioned, like it seems all very broad. I can go in detail if you want, but then the third thing which I would say is most important is humility. I think it's a very overrated trait because when you're young, whether you like it or not, nobody thinks you're good, Like as I tell any person who's going to intern is that like you are a liability to the company. Let's face it, like you're an intern, right? Like why would someone want to hire you? Basically, the guy is taking off his time. Instead of doing the work, he's teaching you to do it, and he was going to screw up, and he's going to check the work, and he's going to ask you to redo it again. And like, it sounds very painful for you, but it's more painful for the guy who is actually asking you to do the work. So I think that whenever you're starting out, the humility is a very important trait, and that continues even when you're older in a career. Because I see that a lot of rich people, a lot of like people who have done well, they have fallen. They have fallen because they were proud. And because when they're proud, they tend to be complacent and they tend to think that they understand everything and they tend to miss the market. And this is where things really break down for them. And I think that humility is such an overrated trait. Everyone likes a person who's humble. I don't think that like anyone would disagree with me because any person, any employer, if you are humble and if you really want to learn, if you're hungry, why would I not like rather choose you than any other person? Because it just shows me that you are one that will make more bang for the buck. You want to be that way.
Fair. I think that is a good point. I think to try to contextualize it. In other words, try to be more real,
Yeah.
Right. I think sometimes people try too hard to be someone they're not.
Yeah.
And how I put it is, while I agree that humility is very charming, sometimes you don't fit this community or you don't fit this environment doesn't mean you cannot thrive in another environment.
Yes.
Right? A lot of times when people go for an interview or when they're switching jobs, they always feel like they're begging. I always feel like, I'm on the short end. But the reality is if this environment is not for you, you will never flourish. I think to sum it up today, maybe you could just share with us a little bit more about like what you are doing and if they want to connect with you,
yes, okay.
Like, where can they search for you?
Right, okay. So right now I started just 2.5 months ago, Kinobi. So Reginald knows about it, definitely. So we are a career mentoring platform. So special thing about us, we are totally digital. So a totally digital mentoring platform. It's focused on a career, helping you get a best career. And that we are currently in 3 countries, Singapore, Indonesia, and India. And we currently have a few programs. So if I explain it very simply, we have two things. One is called Pathways, and then the other one is called a mentoring program. So the Pathways part, how we started is very simple. You know, we were playing games. You know, like I don't know about you, but then I played Maple Story when I was younger. Yeah, then after that, like you know, when you're 12, 13 years old, you're like, oh, you know, how do you build a Dexless sin? You know, things like that.
You know why
Yeah.
you know why I remember? Because I was a mage, right? I was a
Oh,
mage.
wow.
I think our ice and lightning
Ice,
mage,
lightning
right?
mage.
Then I was playing. I was like, how come I'm always stuck here? Then all my friends become like job 4, job
Yeah,
3, job 4.
yeah.
I was like, what the hell are you guys doing, man?
Yeah.
You don't study, Then I was
Yeah.
like, here, So I remember I was never very successful in Maple Story, but yes.
Yeah. So you're like thinking to ourselves, you know, there are all these builds and stuff like that, guides, you know, online telling you where do you fight monsters, level 20, 30, like fight the green mushroom, you know, things like that.
I've never read those guides. Maybe that's
Yeah.
why I suck in the game, right?
Maybe you should have read those guys.
I've never read those guides. Okay.
Yeah. So we realized that like why not just build these guides for life, you know? Then like just build like one for private banking, one for investment banking. A lot of people to experience different things. You know, like Maple Story you can play different characters, right? You see, play the Ice Lightning Mage. Then you can play the Sina assassin, right? Yeah. You know, so like in this way you can sort of like play different things and compare and contrast which one really vibes with you as a person. So I think that's one pathways. And second one is a mentoring program. So this one is of high order. Definitely we are keeping it more exclusive, and eventually it's harder to get inside. So we currently have one in Tech BD. Tech BD is a huge thing now because technology firms are getting a lot of capital. They're the ones surviving COVID, yeah, and they're hiring.
They are thriving. They're not
actually.
surviving COVID.
Yes,
They're doing
yes.
very well. Yes.
And they're hiring a lot. So yeah, that's why we really started this. And if you really want to enter this industry, it's very soft skills related, and we are here to help you. So I think that we have the mentors from like, let's say, SAP, Alibaba Cloud, ByteDance, even GoPay. GoPay recently, part of Gojek, right, became a unicorn. Yeah, so I think that's a huge opportunity there. So we have all these mentors on board. Do come and join us, and you can actually sign up very simply. The link is very simple. It's bit.ly/join-Kinobi. And I think probably Reginald put in the show notes or something like that.
Yeah. Essentially, he's trying to tell me like must put in show notes. Okay,
hint.
bit.ly//
join-Kinobi.
join-Kinobi, Kinobi.
Yes, correct.
Okay, yes. So, but I will still put in the show notes, right? So, thanks for today. Thanks
Yes.
for joining us, and thank you for the military for flying the fighter jet, for National Day, right? So,
Oh yes, soon.
soon. I think you guys will hear this episode after National Day, but thanks for sharing all your tips and tricks, and I hope you learned something useful today. See
Yeah.
ya. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, I hope you learned something useful today and truly appreciate that you took time off to better your life with a financial coconut. Knowledge is that much more powerful and interesting when shared, debated, and discussed. I hope you would share with game with people you love, and I want to hear from you. Give me some questions and help me along with building a community of financially savvy coconuts. I hope together we can fulfill our curious minds and our desire for clarity. Join our community Telegram group, reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram. Everything is in the description below. If you enjoy the podcast and feel you want to keep us growing and stay independent, do buy us a copy at ko-fi.com. With that, have a great day ahead, stay tuned next week, and always remember, personal finance can be chill, clear, and sustainable for all. Test. Okay, I hope Ben managed to convince you that there is some value in going to university. Right? We're not saying that you must go or you need you need to go. No, we're just trying to present the other side of the case so that you get a clearer picture, and then you make a decision of your own whether does it fit you, whether does it fit your goals. Right? So I hope that's helpful for you. And for next week we're going to continue to roll on investment related content. I know many of you guys are trying to learn how to invest and trying to pick stocks and if not pick ETFs or pick REITs, whatever, and if you are not interested to pick, it's also okay. You should continue to listen because you get a better idea of what are the underlying things that you look at, right? So that you can essentially find a clearer manager, or whether the robo-advisor or whatever, right? Essentially to help you manage your investments. And in next week's content, we're going to talk about the qualitative factors, right? 3 qualitative factors that I use to decide what stocks do I pick. truth be told, 20, 30 minutes cannot tell you everything, but I'm going to give you all the important terms that you can go and search for and get a better idea over time, right? It's also a reaction to this guy that gave me 1 star on, what's that? On Apple reviews. Say, previously we published a topic about, how 3 things you must have to be a good stock picker. And what the first point was luck, because I honestly believe that if you cannot grapple the idea of luck, if everything is signs to you, then you will struggle lah. And this guy went on our Apple podcast review and gave us a 1 star. A bit sad lah. So yeah, if you're still listening, I hope you enjoy next week's episode and can review us, give us 5 stars. Okay, but anyway, I just want to also humble flex lah that we actually know what we are saying lah. Okay, right? We're not like professionals, but we're enthusiasts, and we don't think we are. I personally don't think that I'm talking cock lah. Okay, sometimes I am, but yeah, on the theme of investments, we make sure that the things that we publish to you are of quality. So next week, we're going to talk about the qualitative factors so that you can be a better stock picker lah. See ya next week.